Hey man, real stay safe shit. You already know what the fuck going on. So before we get into this shit, I'm gonna need you to like, comment, subscribe. Fucking check out my link in the bio for the motherfucking merch and shit. Now let's run this shit the fuck up. So it was December 18th, 2021. Once upon a time in LA, a big ass festival was set to happen. It had features such as Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, fucking YG, Drakeo the Ruler, basically anyone from that to Al Green had everyone there, man. And the crazy thing about all this is there's just a lot that went wrong, and I feel like so many people right now are making videos about like the situation that happened with Drakeo, which is terrible, and the gang politics which is in it. But I've already made hella videos on that. I wanted to make a video on something that people aren't really talking about, and that is Once Upon a Time in LA was basically a concert from hell. It was probably just as bad as the Astroworld situation, I feel like, because at least in the Astroworld, well, not at least, but in the Astroworld situation, the people that were injured were fans. But that was kind of caused by something that was kind of out of control. Like, you could really blame the promoters and stuff for like not having enough security, but like that type of situation that happened with people getting trampled and stuff, like that's kind of like out of their control. Even if they did have more security, it's like the amount of people that were there was so crazy in the place that couldn't be contained. But this type of situation that happened with Drakeo the Ruler was something that was totally avoidable. And there's a lot of things that are wrong with this concert that went down, and people are saying that it was like a terrible concert and shit. So let's get into a couple of things that kind of attributed to the fact that this nigga, the headliner of the show, ends up getting killed. So number one, before we get into anything, we got to talk about the fact that both Astroworld and Once Upon a Time in LA were two festivals that were ran by Live Nation. Live Nation has been getting lots of criticism and heat having to do with the fact that they were kind of the people that were in charge of the Astroworld situation. In doing so, they like failed on multiple fronts in the Astroworld shit, and the number one thing that they failed was not having enough security. Like, you saw the people that went through the fucking crowd, metal detectors and stuff like that in the Astroworld situation. That was one thing that happened in this situation. Well, it didn't happen the same way, but it like when I saw that footage of people jumping over the fences and stuff like that, I couldn't help but feel like, damn, like they were lucky that no one brought anything crazy in the crowd or anything, because someone could have easily brought something in the crowd and did something to a performer, just like a random or something, just in doing so like that. And this is kind of like that type of situation, but the main difference is this was backstage, so that's even more fucked up, because they're just letting, like, don't you think if it's backstage they should be checking people more than just like the average personnel that are coming up? Like, they should definitely check, but they were able to get that stuff out of there. That was a major issue, and that's an issue that happened on both things. And being a Live Nation show, it just shows that it's scary, because they didn't learn from what they were going through previously, you know? Like, they went through this whole scenario like a month ago of people dying at a concert because they didn't have enough people, and what do? They throw another fucking show, and so the headliner dies this time. So it's really Live Nation and the people who are organizing and promoters with this shit that just really don't care, and they're really just like putting people in harm's way and stuff. On top of that, hella people who are on at the show and event on Twitter, like, they basically say that there was a lot of logistics issues. They ran out of water at one point, which is like already like Astroworld shit. Like, niggas were dying from all types of causes, and a lot of it could have been prevented, and you would think that they would have more type of personnel and stuff after a major tragedy. So they didn't have water. They said that the lines were super long, and they said a lot of the things that they said, I saw people saying that there was little to no security, no one was getting pat down. Like, niggas aren't thinking, man. Like, this is LA. Not only to say that this is LA, but this is South Central LA, but we're gonna get to that later. So basically, that's already a bad mix right there. Like, it's a major festival that's kind of shoddily put together, and that's already a combination. We saw what could happen with bad planning for a large scale event. And this is probably the Astro World situation was probably one of the worst outcomes that could ever happen when you're throwing a show. I think that the absolute, for a promoter at least, the absolute worst scenario that can happen is your fucking headliner getting killed at the show. That is probably, like, they're both like on a scale of 10 to 10, like they're both 10s, but that's like a 10.5 because it's like you're killing not only somebody's family member, but you're killing a famous person, so the publicity is gonna be like fucking terrible. So off rip, that's already terrible. And then it basically, in doing so, it's kind of like creating a whole fucking gang war and shit in doing that. So that shit is crazy in itself that these niggas, Live Nation, managed to fuck up like goddamn basically everything this year. They're taking the biggest L this year. But let's get into the rest of it. So they decided to throw this party, this festival with like let's not sugarcoat it, man. Like, this is basically straight up gangbanger music. It's West Coast shit, but they got Snoop Dogg, they got YG. Drakeo was not a gangbanger, but he was heavily affiliated allegedly. And if you know anything about LA, you should know that YG and Drakeo should not be at the same show. That makes no fucking sense whatsoever. I don't know if he was at Rolling Loud or what happened, but it's just not good because of a multitude of reasons. You look back, I made a video on this of Drakeo versus Inglewood, where he was basically dissing the Bloods in Inglewood, which are heavily affiliated with the Treetop Hyrus, which is YG's gang. So it's already a whole bunch of politics and that shit that's kind of fucked up. So on top of that, how are you gonna book two rival artists in the same city? That shit is just fried, man. Like, and that in itself is like where they went wrong, definitely. Because like, I guess they thought that this shit was Rolling Loud, but there was like multiple days and shit of, I don't even know if this festival is multiple days, but Rolling Loud, they had issues in the past, and they were kind of the biggest festival. That's kind of why I'm using this as an example. But for instance, like the K-Flock fight where he fought behind backstage at Rolling Loud was like a major thing, and that I feel like was sort of like a preview of what could possibly go wrong. And that was just an example of like booking artists the same day, I guess, for like that are beefing. And I don't know if these labels or not know about this or what, but they need to have someone on their team that could like look at this and be like, hey man, like this is wrong. Especially these like festivals and promoters, like they're not thinking about anyone, and I don't know what they saw on there and what was good. So that was already like a dub, and that was already suspicious. So K7, which is Drakeo, told me, he basically was saying that Drakeo was not allowed to bring more than 15 people, and he brought 15 people with him, and they only had like a couple of parking spots basically in there. And then that's already a red flag, because this venue is not safe. This is like a big ass stadium. Like you saw in the Astro World situation, anyone can get into the stadium. You see also like people are not getting pat down in a large ass festival like this. Maybe a show. Maybe if this was at the Novo or like a show on Sunset or something, like people would get pat down because there's like limited entryways. But this is like way too many people to pat down people professionally and really even be able to see if they have anything. But them seeing that there's only 15 people allowed, that should have been a red flag, because you're a performer, you're the headliner, you should be able to bring whoever the fuck you want. But whoever was throwing this said that, but then allegedly, according to him, but I feel like this is like borderline snitching and shit, but he was basically saying that YG was able to bring 50 to 100 people. And if you look at the videos of the fights, you see like a large amount of people fucking like all running against each other and stuff, and it's definitely not a good look. So I feel like that, whether that's real or not, is definitely sus. But I do know for a fact, and it has come across, I know Academics was talking about this, one of the things about LA and the festivals that are in there, and that was specifically kind of in like the South Central area, sort of coming up right south of downtown, like that type of area, right at the very front of South Central, like basically in the middle of South Central. They had this, like a lot of the security is apparently gang related and stuff, or just like niggas that are from the hood that are just around the area, so they're obviously gonna have their affiliations and stuff, and obviously could let people potentially in who want something in, because like that's just how it is. you see this situation all the time in the West Coast, because it's like people just know each other, and niggas know each other, and other people know each other, and then before you know it, you know the person that's security and shit, and they let them in. You kind of see the situation with what happened with X when he was fucking like jumped in San Diego, and that whole situation, they let niggas in and fucking do that shit. So I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I really feel like this shit was a setup, and I don't know if the promoters, Live Nation, were intentionally trying to set this up or what happened, but they allowed this to happen through their like basic miscommunication and trying to cut corners once again. So ultimately this time someone else died, and I don't know if this will change festivals. Hopefully it will, but it seems like they're gonna have to do a lot of reflection, and they're getting a lot of lawsuits and shit, and this is like the worst possible scenario that could happen. Imagine that happened to someone else. Like, imagine Snoop Dogg gets killed at his own show or some shit. Like, that shit is definitely wrong, and I feel like that type of thing is not like, it's not too far off. Like, sure, there's like politics that prevents that type of shit, but it's like, if anyone could get, if your headliner could end up getting killed at their show, it's like anyone is a target, and they're like, these festivals are not safe. And that was just an example, extreme example, but we saw that again with Astroworld. So man, we just gotta figure out a way to make this shit more safe. I mean, Travis Scott was talking about that in his interview with Charlamagne. They gotta find some solutions, but it seems that Live Nation is already at fault, and I don't think this is gonna help their case when they continue to fucking like battle the case of Travis Scott. This is definitely gonna hurt the case. But hey man, let me know in the comments, you think it's Live Nation's fault, or you think it's fucking, it was all set up, or you think it's both, man? Let me know. Link in the description.